Some rooms carry a kind of silence that feels too deliberate, like they're holding something back. Room 308 is one of those. It sits at the far end of the pediatric recovery hall, right beside the old supply closet that never locks properly. The walls are faded pink, peeled at the corners, and the ceiling vent rattles in the wind, even though the window never opens. It's not the creepiest room in the hospital, not by a long shot, but it's the one that makes you pause when you pass it in the middle of the night, when the rest of the floor is sleeping, and your footsteps are the only ones echoing off the linoleum. It's quiet, always quiet, and yet somehow not still. My name is Karen. I'm 36 years old, and I've been a pediatric night nurse at this hospital for 9 years. I used to tell myself the night shift was just practical. I didn't have kids, I didn't have much of a social life, and I liked the way the hospital dimmed after dark. Less noise, fewer visitors, no one watching your every move. But over time, I realized I also liked the way no one expected you to celebrate things, like birthdays. I was on shift for mine when this happened. I didn't tell anyone, didn't expect anything, just brought in a couple of those mini vanilla cupcakes from the grocery store and left them in the break room for whoever wanted one. That was enough. I told myself that was enough. It started just after 3 a.m. I remember the exact time because I had just finished my rounds and was jotting notes into a chart at the nurse's station. That's when I heard it, soft mechanical music, faint and slow, like it was coming from another wing. At first I thought it was someone's ringtone. Some nurse on break watching a YouTube video or scrolling TikTok with the volume too low. But then I realized it was a tune I knew too well. Happy Birthday, played from a music box. I got up, followed the sound. It wasn't loud, it felt like it was hiding in the walls, but I traced it down the hallway toward room 308. The door was closed, lights off inside, and the window beside the door was covered by the curtain. No patient had been in there for weeks. It was out of rotation while they replaced the flooring after a leak, but the music was coming from inside. I hesitated, pressed my hand to the door. The surface felt warm, not hot, not unnatural, but like someone had just left the room a moment ago. I opened it. The room was dark, the kind of dark that sinks into you thick and soft like being underwater. I reached for the wall switch. The overhead lights buzzed once but didn't come on. My flashlight flickered, but I caught just enough of the space to see the bed was made. Perfectly. Corners tucked in sharp, like the way we do it after a patient's discharged. On the bedside table sat a music box. It was pale blue with little silver stars painted across the lid. Ceramic, old-fashioned. I hadn't seen it there before, and I would have noticed it. It wasn't hospital issue. The tune slowed as I approached. It wasn't winding down. Not exactly. It was more like it was watching me. I reached out, hesitated, then opened the lid. There were no gears inside, no ballerina, no winding mechanism, just a folded note. I picked it up. It was a child's drawing, stick figures, a nurse, a little girl, a bed, a cake with 3 candles, and at the bottom, written in shaky crayon, "Thank you for trying." The hair on my arms rose. I knew that handwriting. Her name was Ellie. She was one of my first patients when I started here, 3 years old, in for a long recovery after a failed heart surgery. She loved music boxes. Her mom had brought one every visit, and on her birthday we decorated her room with construction paper balloons and made a cake out of pudding cups. She died 2 days later. I hadn't thought about her in a long time, not because I didn't care, but because in this job you have to forget, or it will swallow you whole. The music stopped. The silence that followed was thicker than before, like the room had sunk into itself. I stayed there longer than I meant to, just sitting beside the empty bed. When I stood to leave, I placed the music box back on the table. I didn't close the lid. Something about it felt wrong, like I was shutting someone in. I didn't tell anyone. What would I say? That a child who died 3 years ago left me a note on my birthday. But the next night, at 3:08 a.m. exactly, the music played again, and the night after that, I stopped walking that hallway, started taking the long route to the supply closet. But still, every shift, when the clock hit 3:08, the music would echo faintly through the vents. One night, I passed a new nurse charting by the station. She looked up, confused. "Do you hear that?" she asked. I said no. Later, I brought a cupcake to room 3, just one, left it on the table beside the music box. The next morning, It was gone. The music stopped after that. Weeks passed, then months. I started to think it was over. Then last week, I opened my locker and found another child's drawing tucked inside. No envelope, just paper, folded in half, crayon lines, another nurse, another cake, and this time, 4 candles, not 3. I don't know what that means. Maybe Ellie is still counting. Maybe she's waiting. Maybe she just wanted someone to remember. Now every year on my birthday, I leave a cupcake in that room. I don't speak. I don't light candles. But when I leave, I always whisper, I remember you. And sometimes, just sometimes, the music box answers back. One soft note, then silence. The chute hallway always felt too cold, no matter how high the boilers were turned up. It ran beneath the pediatric wing, snaking through the underbelly of the hospital like a forgotten artery. No windows, just concrete and rust, and the soft, endless hum of machines doing what machines do, sucking things down, processing, discarding. I never minded working down there. In fact, I preferred it. It was quiet, honest. Laundry doesn't lie to you. It just piles up and waits. My name is Lionel. I'm 43, and for years I handled the overnight laundry runs at St. Agnes Children's Hospital. The job suited me. Solitary, predictable. After my daughter passed, I didn't have much interest in being around people. The sound of children laughing above me was enough. I didn't need to see their faces. It was during my birthday shift when I first noticed the balloons. That night, I was wheeling one of the last bins toward the washer bays. Everything smelled of bleach and steam. The tunnel lights buzzed overhead, flickering in that tired way they always did. I was about to make the turn by the drain station when I heard a soft pop, pop, pop behind me. Not sharp like firecrackers, more like something brushing against metal. I turned, expecting a valve issue, but what I saw was a balloon floating, soggy, half deflated. It was tangled in the grate over the secondary drain, bobbing like a child's forgotten toy. The string was twisted around the bars, and the balloon itself still bore a fading message in rainbow font, "Happy Birthday." I blinked. There shouldn't have been anything like that down here. No parties, no decorations, no staff on this level besides me. I knelt beside the grate. The string was wet and fraying. I tugged it gently, but it snapped off like it had been there a long time. I thought about reporting it, but what would I say? Party favors in the plumbing, so I tossed it in the bin and kept moving. The next night, there were 3 balloons, each a different color. One said, "Get well soon," the others, "Happy Birthday" again, all of them damp, all tangled in the same grate. This time, I pried open the cover. The drain beneath was black, deep, like a well, but I swear I saw something shimmer just beneath the surface. Not water, paper, cards, hundreds of them soaked and wrinkled, all jammed into the drainage basin. I fished one out. The ink had bled, but the border still showed cartoon animals and balloons. Inside, there was a name, "To Lionel, happy 6th birthday." My heart stopped. I hadn't heard that name in years. That card, that exact design, it had been from my daughter. I'd kept it once, long ago, tucked in a drawer. After her accident, I threw out most things. I didn't want to look at them. Couldn't. Was this some sick joke? Had someone gone through my past, dug up my grief? But the card was real. Wet, soft around the edges, but real. I didn't sleep that day. I came back the next night early, waited by the grate. Nothing, until 3:14 a.m. The air changed, not colder, just heavier, like breath held too long. Then plop, a red balloon surfaced from the drain. It didn't float like the others. It rose slow, deliberate, and bumped against the metal grate, like a knuckle tapping glass. I backed away. On its side was scrawled, "You forgot." The handwriting was childish, familiar. I locked the hallway and called in a maintenance order. "Block drain," I said. They never showed. After that, I started finding balloons in other places, in the elevator, in my locker. One was in the passenger seat of my car when I left a shift, sitting there like it had been buckled in the whole night. Each had a message. Some were just names. Others said things like, "I waited," or you said you'd come back. I told myself I was losing it. Grief does that. It reshapes the edges of reality until every shadow looks like someone you miss. But then, the chute jammed. The baskets wouldn't empty. The machine stopped mid-cycle. I had to go down to the drain again, pry it open fully. What I saw inside this time wasn't paper or string. It was toys, plastic dinosaurs, a stuffed bunny, half a puzzle piece, items that should have never made it to laundry, items I remembered from patient rooms years ago. Some belonged to kids I hadn't thought about in forever. One of them, Elijah, had loved puzzles. He'd died during a birthday visit. Another, Nina, used to carry that bunny everywhere. Each item from a kid who'd passed during my shift. And each time I'd been too late to respond, too focused on the routine. Laundry doesn't lie to you, but it remembers. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went back upstairs, found the old birthday calendar in the staff lounge, covered in dust, forgotten behind a microwave. I flipped back through the months, checked the names. Some had been erased, others never written, but mine was still there, and something had written beside it in thick black marker. You work while we wait. I sat down right there on the floor, let it wash over me. Not terror, not confusion, just sorrow. Not just mine, theirs, the ones who were promised attention, a smile, a simple gift of being seen, and we forgot them. I forgot them. Now every year, I bring a helium tank down to the laundry chute, fill 5 balloons, one for each child I remember by name. I write messages on each one, and I let them go, one by one, into the dark drain. I don't know if they ever reach anything, but since I started, no more balloons have appeared, not one. Still, I feel the weight, not of guilt exactly, of memory, and of the silence that follows after you finally decide to listen. The chute still rattles sometimes, and every now and then, I hear a pop, pop, pop behind me. I don't turn anymore, because I know what I'll see. A red balloon, bobbing gently, just... There's a room in the old north wing that the kids don't ask about. They pass it, wide-eyed and silent, like they've already learned not to look too long. It used to be the playroom, a bright, welcoming space filled with plastic toys, coloring books and posters that peeled with time. But now it just smells like stale chalk and forgotten birthdays. The sun doesn't reach that room anymore. The windows are too high, too clouded. Even with the lights on, the shadows cling. But the mirror is what makes people uncomfortable. A wide wall-length thing framed in metal, slightly tarnished around the edges, installed for observation once, back when therapy games were held there. Now no one has a reason to stand in front of it. No one wants to see what looks back. My name is Janelle. I'm 29. I work with trauma cases in the pediatric psych ward, mostly kids too young to understand the things done to them, or worse, kids who understand too well. It's a hard job, quiet, fragile, like trying to carry water in your hands. On the night of my birthday shift, I brought in cupcakes, vanilla, with bright frosting and little plastic rings pressed into the top. I set them on the counter in the staff lounge, taped a handwritten note, "Take one if you need a reason to smile." Only one of them was taken. The north wing has been unused for years, but they asked me to do a walkthrough that night. The security guard on duty was new and jumpy. Said he heard voices in the hallway, children laughing. It wouldn't be the first time someone imagined things in that part of the building. I said I'd go check. The moment I stepped inside the old playroom, I knew something was off. The light from the hallway didn't quite reach the floor. The air had that dusty warmth of something sealed too long. Toys were scattered across the carpet, like they'd been abandoned mid-play. Blocks, little figurines, a puzzle missing half its edge pieces, and the mirror. It sat quietly, stretching the length of the room, reflecting every piece of dust, every smear on the floor. I turned slowly, inspecting the shelves and corners, and that's when I saw it. In the reflection, just for a second, was a child, a little girl standing in the corner, head tilted down. But when I turned around, there was no one there. My pulse kicked. I took a few slow steps toward the mirror and stared at it. My own reflection looked normal, tired, a little pale under the fluorescent lights, but mine, and then she appeared again, standing behind me. I spun around, nothing. I turned back, still nothing in the mirror. I backed out of the room, told myself it was fatigue, a trick of the light. I'd seen worse on less sleep. But it didn't stop. Over the next few nights, I'd catch glimpses of her in the mirror, not just in the playroom, but in other reflective surfaces. Windows, polished tile, the edge of a TV screen, always standing still, always watching. The odd part was, I started recognizing her, not from files or photos, but from memory. Her name was Tessa. She was 6 years old, came to us after an incident at home that no child should ever live through. Non-verbal for months, would only sit in the playroom and draw. She had a red balloon she kept with her, tied to her wrist with surgical tape. One day, she was gone. No warning, no transfer papers, just gone. We were told it was a clerical error. Her parents came, took her home, but I remember the look in her eyes the day before she vanished. She had drawn something, a stick figure nurse, and beside her, a smaller stick figure with a red balloon, both smiling. It was the only time she ever smiled. Now in the mirror she looked older, 7, maybe 8, but her eyes were the same. That night, I returned to the playroom. The mirror was dark, almost clouded over. I stood in front of it and waited. After a moment, she appeared again, but this time, she wasn't alone. I saw myself beside her in the reflection, kneeling, smiling, holding out a cupcake. I wasn't moving in real life. I lifted my hand to my face. In the mirror, my reflection was wiping away a tear. The disconnect was unbearable. It felt like I was watching a memory I hadn't lived yet, or one I'd buried. I leaned in closer. Her lips moved. I couldn't hear anything, just the hum of the building. Then the red balloon drifted into view. It tapped gently against the mirror from the inside. I stepped back. The next morning, I found a red balloon tied to my locker. No note. No one saw who placed it. I carried it to the playroom and left it there. Sat down on the carpet, right where she used to sit. The silence in the room felt thicker, like it was holding its breath. And then I remembered something I hadn't thought about in years. When I was a child, maybe 5 or 6, I was in this hospital, pneumonia. I had been feverish for days. I remember a nurse, kind eyes, red nails, bringing me a balloon and sitting beside me as I cried for my mother. That balloon was red. That nurse was not on staff anymore. No one ever found her name in the records. I never saw her again, but she told me, when you grow up, remember the quiet ones. I hadn't, until now. I went back to the playroom every night for a week. I brought old drawings from patients we'd lost. Little things, crayon scribbles, paper crowns, origami animals. I placed them beneath the mirror. Each time, the reflection shifted, became clearer. But I never saw Tessa again. The mirror, however, always showed 2 figures, a nurse and a child, not moving, just remembering each other. Sometimes I think mirrors aren't for looking at ourselves. Maybe they're for seeing what we forgot or who we left behind. Now the mirror is boarded up. Administration said it was cracked, possibly unsafe. No one argues. But when I walk past that hallway, I sometimes hear the soft pop of a balloon stretching, not bursting, just breathing, waiting. The hallway outside room 214 always smells like sugar and dust, too sweet, too stale, like someone left a birthday cake out overnight and forgot to clean up the crumbs. It's not a bad smell, exactly, but it lingers, clings to the back of your throat like a memory you can't quite name. There's something off about that section of the pediatric wing. Maybe it's because they don't use it much anymore. The walls are still painted with faded murals of cartoon animals, smiling giraffes, awkward lions, little bees with birthday hats, but the paint is chipped, and the eyes of the animals seem duller than they used to. There's a silence there that feels pre-celebrated, like something happened and no one ever clapped when it ended. My name is Delia. I'm 51. I've been a pediatric nurse for nearly 3 decades. This job is all I've ever known. I've sung more renditions of Happy Birthday than I can count, bought more cupcakes than I've eaten. I used to love celebrating with the kids. It made everything feel softer, more human, even on the hardest nights. But now I don't do candles, not anymore. My birthday fell on a Wednesday that year. It was the middle of a double shift, 12 hours into a 16-hour run, and I was bone tired, with swollen feet, and the kind of headache that makes you forget your own name if you blink too long. No one remembered it was my birthday. I didn't expect them to. I hadn't said anything. I'd learned over time that birthdays at work were better when ignored. That night, I was doing supply checks, walking the quieter halls while most of the floor finally slept. I passed room 214 and stopped. The door was open just a crack. That was strange in itself. The room had been out of rotation for months, maybe longer. Something about a leak in the ceiling and a busted outlet. Last I heard, they hadn't gotten around to fixing it. But the lights were on inside, soft and warm, like someone had dimmed them on purpose. I pushed the door open gently. What I saw stopped me cold. The room was decorated, not with medical supplies or maintenance tools, but with party decorations. Streamers draped across the ceiling, a small mylar balloon tied to the bed frame, and on the bedside table, a cupcake, vanilla with pink frosting. One single candle in the center, unlit. There was no patient chart outside, no name written on the board, no files, no vitals monitor, no IV pole, just the party, silent and waiting. I stepped inside, heart racing in that slow, sinking way it does when something doesn't make sense. I looked around, half expecting someone to jump out and yell surprise, but there was no one. The air smelled like wax and sugar, like someone had just blown out a candle. I walked to the cupcake and saw something tucked beneath the plate, a photograph. My hand shook as I picked it up. It was of me. Taken from the side, I was smiling, crouched beside a hospital bed. The child in the photo had their face obscured by motion blur, but their hand was on mine. There was a birthday hat on my head. The date in the corner read July 12th. My birthday, but the year was wrong. It was 6 years ago. I couldn't place the child. I tried. I studied the shape of the hand, the outline of the shoulders, the toys near the bed. Nothing came, but I knew that photo had never been taken, not by anyone I remembered. The next morning, I asked around. No one knew who had cleaned 214. No one had seen the decorations. The cupcake was gone when I returned. I started digging. I requested old patient records, scanned through years of birthdays that landed on mine. Some of the files were missing. Others had been archived improperly, but one stood out. Her name was Mina, 7 years old. She had leukemia, was supposed to be transferred to another facility for a trial study. She never made it. She died the night before her birthday. The note from the attending nurse said she had asked for candles, said she wanted to stay up late and have just one more birthday in her favorite room, room 214. That attending nurse had been me, but I didn't remember her. Not her name, not her voice, not her face. How do you forget something like that? I reread the report 5 times, hoping to stir a memory. There was none. The week after, the room was dark again, undisturbed, but on the night of my next birthday, the door was open once more. A cupcake, a candle, a new photo. This one had the child's face, smiling, gapped teeth, pigtails. Her eyes were bright, like she was about to laugh. My face was turned toward her. I was laughing too, except I had never seen that child before in my life. Every year after that, the same thing, room 214. One cupcake, one candle, a different photo, always of me and a child I couldn't quite place, like memories borrowed from someone else's life. I stopped telling people when my birthday was. I stopped walking that hallway, if I could help it, but part of me always ends up there anyway. The hospital shifts time in subtle ways. You think you're going left, and you end up right outside the door without knowing how. Last year, I decided to leave something behind. I brought a second cupcake, lit both candles, one for me, one for Mina. I sat in the chair beside the bed and waited. The air felt heavy, not threatening, just full, like someone was sitting with me. I whispered, "I remember now," though I wasn't sure if I really did. That night, I dreamed of a birthday party in a hospital room. A little girl in a blue gown handed me a crayon drawing of the two of us, standing under balloons. When I woke up, my hands smelled faintly of wax. Now, I leave 2 candles every year. I never eat the cupcake. I just sit, I listen, and I let the silence do what it needs to do. Some birthdays are for the living, others are for remembering. Room 2114 still smells like sugar and dust, and the candlelight always flickers, even when there's no wind, like someone's blowing out a wish that never quite goes out. Some files are heavier than others, not by weight. Paper is paper, but by the silence that follows when you hold them, like the pages don't want to be read, like the names inside are still watching. The birthday list was one of those files. It was kept in a blue binder, dusty and bent at the corners, tucked into the bottom drawer of the pediatric ward's social work desk. No one touched it anymore. We'd moved to digital records years ago, but the binder stayed, like a relic, too stubborn to be thrown out. My name is Sasha. I'm 32. I've worked as a family liaison at St. Mary's Children's Hospital since I was 24. My job is to remember birthdays, allergies, favorite toys, which kids cry when they see clowns, and which ones beg for them. I try to make the hospital feel like a place where a child can still be a child, even when they're dying. I always volunteered for the birthday shifts, not because I liked them, but because I couldn't stand the idea of a kid spending their birthday alone, especially the ones whose parents didn't show, or couldn't. The last birthday I worked was mine. I didn't tell anyone. It was easier that way. I brought a bag of balloons, a few dollar store gift bags, and a used bubble machine I'd picked up from a thrift shop the week before. There were 5 birthdays on the schedule that week. One of them, Bryce, had turned 4. No visitors, no calls, just me, a cupcake, and a sparkly plastic truck wrapped in blue tissue paper. I came back late that night to clean up. Most of the staff had gone home. The halls were dark except for the humming fluorescents over the nurse's station. That's when I noticed the binder sitting out, the birthday list. I hadn't seen it in years. No one had. It should have been locked away. I picked it up expecting the usual. Dates, room numbers, gift suggestions, maybe old notes from the child life team. But when I opened to the current week, there were 7 birthdays listed, not 5, and 2 of the names I didn't recognize them. No room numbers, no assigned staff, just names, ages, and one word beneath each: uncelebrated. I flipped back. Every page was the same. Hundreds of names. Some I remembered, some I didn't, all marked uncelebrated. I thought it was a mistake, some outdated grief record, maybe a list of patients who had passed near their birthdays. But the pages weren't old. They were pristine, fresh ink, still smelled of toner. And the strangest thing, my own name was on the list. July 18th, age 32, status uncelebrated. I closed the binder and put it back. Maybe someone was playing a joke, a weird one, but we work in a place where gallows humor is sometimes the only thing keeping you from screaming. I went home, didn't think much more of it, until the next night when the balloons started showing up. They weren't the ones I brought. These were older, faded, deflated at the edges. Some were tied to doorknobs. One was in my locker. Another floated gently in the stairwell, drifting like it had somewhere to be. Each had a tag, each with a name from the list. Some of the names I recognized, children I'd worked with, some who had passed, others who had simply stopped coming. Each tag read, "You said you'd remember." The binder reappeared the next night, on my desk. Even though I'd locked the office, I opened it again. Now 10 new names, all marked uncelebrated. All names I had once read aloud during morning check-ins. Names I'd said with a smile, names I'd forgotten. The lights flickered, just once, and then I heard the sound, soft, delicate, children singing, "Happy birthday to you," off-key, faint, coming from the supply closet. I stood, my hands were shaking. The closet was empty, except for one candle, still warm, flickering gently, without wind. That was when I knew this wasn't a prank. This was a ledger. A record of promises broken, of milestones ignored. The next morning, I confronted the nurse manager. asked her where the binder came from. She looked at me like I was speaking another language. That old thing, we tossed it out years ago. I asked if she was sure. I watched it go in the incinerator myself. I didn't ask further. I knew the binder would still be there the next night. It was, and every night after. New names, every time. Always 10, always uncelebrated. The messages became more personal, scribbled notes left under my keyboard. Do you remember my favorite cake? I was going to be a dinosaur. You promised. I started to crack, not all at once, but like paper soaking in water, softening, curling. One night, I flipped through the binder page by page, looking at every child, trying to place each face in my mind, even if I couldn't remember them all. And that's when I saw the photo tucked into the back cover. It was a group shot, taken in the playroom, balloons, streamers, a cake shaped like a rocket. In the center was me, holding a toddler, smiling, but the other children in the picture, the ones surrounding me, had no faces, just blank gray smudges where their eyes and mouths should be, and each wore a party hat. I don't remember that photo being taken, but I remember the dress I wore. I remember the bracelet. I remember feeling happy, and I remember the next morning when we learned that one of the children in that photo had passed overnight. We canceled the party, packed up the gifts, moved on, but the photo remained. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I lit a candle for each name in the binder that week. I whispered their names aloud, even the ones I didn't remember clearly. I didn't ask for forgiveness, just recognition. The bunny didn't show up the next day, but the candles, they burned for hours, longer than they should have. Even after I blew them out, the wicks glowed. That was a week ago. Now I keep the binder with me, not because I want to, but because it always returns anyway. Every night, 10 new names. Sometimes I know them, sometimes I wish I didn't, but I say each one. I light a candle, I leave a balloon in the courtyard, because somewhere in this hospital, something is keeping count, not of who lived, but of who was forgotten on the days they wanted most to be remembered. There's a weight in that, a promise in the flame, and maybe, just maybe, there's still time to honor it, before the list grows again.